So if you're a fan of Hamilton, you are going to love Mexodus. This groundbreaking musical combines history with hip-hop to explore the untold stories of enslaved people on the Underground Railroad to Mexico. Brian Quijada and Nigel D. Robinson give tour de force performances while using live looping to create a musical in real time. Mexodus is now playing at Mosaic Theater on 8th Street Northeast through June 15th. Get tickets at mosaictheater.org. That's mosaictheater.org.
Hey, listener, before we get to today's conversation, I have a favor to ask. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out if you took it. If you took it last year, we'd be grateful if you took it again, since we can't use last year's data anymore. Please just go to citycast.fm/survey to take the survey. It should only take 7 minutes max. We timed it. That's citycast.fm/survey. And when you take the survey, you will also be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and CityCast City swag. citycast.fm/survey. Today on CityCast DC, right about now, we would usually be doing our Friday News Roundup, but instead we are sitting down with the Mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser. Her Honor invited me to her office in the Wilson Building, and I showed up with questions about her administration, her future plans, and the state of D.C. Stick around. Today is Friday, May 24th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what D.C. is talking about. Mayor, thank you so much for inviting us down here.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here.
It's awesome to be here.
Thank you.
So you are just about halfway through your third term. You are probably very happy that you're not up for re-election right now because there's signs everywhere and it seems like a lot of work. But if you were, what do you think you'd be talking about that's going well?
Well, I can tell you what I'm talking about right now. How about that?
Better yet.
We're focused on our 10th balanced budget and getting our budget through the council. It has been a more challenging budget than my previous submissions, but it has allowed us to do some really smart and strategic work and send a great document that invests in our downtown and public safety and schools, the pillars we think of the growth of our city.
It was hard this year, the budget.
Tough budget.
And I think a lot of people who have not been in D.C. politics that long are not used to having tough budgets.
As it turns out, a lot of people in this building aren't used to tough budgets. Why should they be? We have had a roaring economy, and until COVID, and then because of COVID, we don't. I tell my budget director all the time, when COVID hit, we were almost finished our budget. That was March, right? February, March 2020. And we're about to turn it into the council. I mean, literally, and then bottom falls out. It was the best budget you can imagine. We were able to do everything that we promised for the previous 8 years.
Ponies for every child.
Practically. It was beautiful. And part of my, I was in a funk in those first weeks of COVID. And part of it was I had to say goodbye to that budget. It was good, but we had to drop everything, redo a budget with the council. We all sat down and agreed about how we would get it done, and we've been digging out ever since then. But even with that, we are able to invest in world-class schools and parks and building our police force and making sure we are putting the building blocks in place to attract new residents, new businesses, more jobs, more tourists, more restaurant goers, because that is what has allowed us to really have the type of city that we're proud of.
Again, halfway through your third term, what do you think's
Almost.
So, I don't want to shortchange you. What do you think is not going so well that you want to tune up for the next couple of years?
Anytime in big cities that you can run into big city problems, some not of our making, some of your making. Mm-hmm. And I am very committed to making sure that we have a government that we can be proud of, that we can attract the best of the best, that we have robust programs and services, and that we are a safe city. I think last year we had a a spike in crime that was jolting for everyone, our residents, businesses, and everybody included. But I think we've worked very hard to reset the public safety ecosystem. People hate when I say that sometimes, but if you look at the ecosystem, you know that it needed shaking up, and we've been able to do it.
What's some of the shaking up you did?
I think we saw our system become one that, if I had a word to say it, it defaulted towards diverting people who have committed significant crimes out of the criminal justice system and away from one that was based in accountability. So I have worked very hard with the council. We've advanced our own initiatives. They've advanced their own initiatives. And I think we're getting a little bit back to center, if not center left, in the public safety ecosystem.
I mean, it must be incredibly tricky for you. You are the chief executive of the District of Columbia, but the person who prosecutes accused criminals does not work for you. You can't boss that person around. And so doing something like what you said, reset the ecosystem, is all that much more difficult because there is not sort of a clear line of command and responsibility.
You know, that is all true. But at the end of the day, I'm responsible. And that's what the voters think, and that's what I think. And I think regardless of who reports to me or not in our public safety ecosystem, I'm the person who speaks for everybody who lives and works here and visits here, and I represent them all. And so it's my job to work with all the partners, whether, they report to me or not.
So the Post and the Schar School published this poll that suggested your approval rating, your popularity had dipped quite a bit after being pretty high for 10 years. I suspect that chief executives across the country are seeing the same thing because the country seems like a not especially happy place right now. But what do you attribute it to?
Well, I've been elected a bunch of times. I've been mayor in a big city for 10 years. I think they took a poll in the middle of my toughest budget, where we've had to ask residents and businesses for more. And there's a lot of debate about it. So I think that I'm proud of my record, and I'm always going to be talking to residents about why I make the decisions that I make. But probably there are not a lot of 10-year mayors out there. But if they were, they would probably tell you that's not bad.
One of the big things that has not been an issue for D.C. mayors for quite some time is, as you alluded to, crime spiked in 2023. It's now down quite significantly in 2024.
Yep.
But I think one of the things that happened, my sense, just talking to neighbors and stuff, is that people felt anxious and scared and felt like there were elements of our politics, and they don't follow closely enough to tell what they were, but they were elements of our politics that really weren't taking their complaints seriously. It was like, why are you being so whiny? Why are you being a Karen? How do you think crime has affected the mood of the city and your ability to get things done?
Well, I wouldn't describe people's concern as being a Karen at all, because I think we had some real crime issues, and we had crime in places that we hadn't had it, and we had scary crimes. So no, I wouldn't describe it that way. One thing that I will say is that the system didn't get sideways overnight. It happened over time. And I think a lot of people didn't pay attention. A lot of the press didn't pay attention until one day we woke up. And then I've screamed it from the rafters for a number of years because I saw it coming, from decriminalizing fare evasion to defunding the police to advancing, legislation that lessens, the penalties for crime that we're experiencing. So I've been saying this for a long time, including some vetoes, which I have rarely used in my 10 years. Till one day people woke up and said, what do you mean we have 400 fewer police? How did that happen?
So this got tied up also with the effort by Ted Leonsis to move his teams out, and then the successful effort to stop it in Virginia and bring them back. What the idea was they were at least sending word that they felt less comfortable inviting their fans to come down that gallery place.
Well, I think that was a little overplayed, and they have said as much, and I always knew as much. It wasn't about crime. And I've said, written, and I will repeat, it wasn't about crime.
Let's be real. Lawsuits are not fun. But with Paulson and Nace, at least they're a little easier. Paulson and Nace is a DC law firm in every sense of the word. It was founded here in 1979. The two partners, Chris and Matt Nace, were both born here and are local leaders who care deeply about the DC community. Paulson and Nace handles medical malpractice, wrongful death, and other complex injury cases when someone has been hurt by the negligence of others. And they don't just settle every case. They'll go to court. They'll fight for you. Paulson and Nace has even been recognized as one of U.S. News' best law firms. So, if you have been hurt or have lost a loved one because of someone else's mistake or negligence, call Paulson and Nace for a no-obligation consultation. Visit www.paulsonandnace.com or call 202-463-1999.
One of the other things that has been kind of hanging over this term was, I think, probably, I suspect, a very painful thing for you personally and for the administration last year was the departure of John Falchicchio,
Yes.
your chief of staff. But there was this thing early after that departure was announced when members of the council were pushing for an independent outside review. You were resisting that push. Why did you resist it? It seemed to me like, I don't know, I think institutions can't really investigate themselves, and he let you down. Why didn't you want to have someone from outside come and see what happened?
Because we have a policy, a pretty robust one, and one that has been in place for a number of years, I think since 2017, about how to investigate sexual harassment in the government. And we followed the policy.
Given the uniqueness of that individual.
Well, it's not unique, actually.
No.
It's addressed in the policy.
What I mean is, not everybody has such a long and close relationship with the chief executive of the government. And members of the council are saying, let's get someone from outside given that. Do you feel like they were acting in bad faith?
I feel like we followed a policy, and it turns out they followed a policy that they created. And they asked for an investigation. They got it, which corroborated everything that we knew almost a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Have you been in touch with him?
I've talked to John. It has been reported.
And it's also been reported that he is, was fairly understandably trying to set himself up as a consultant to companies that do business with the district.
If you have questions for him, you can ask him.
When I ran into you a few weeks ago, you were talking to me and Junaid Dill from Axios, and you said, I think all y'all in the media spend too much time focusing on downtown.
No, that's not what I said.
And not enough time, or focusing on the troubles of downtown and not enough time on the state of our neighborhoods.
I don't know if that's exactly what I said. I think what I said was you spend too much time listening only to one segment of the downtown. And I've said this before, and those are just downtown property owners because they're very nervous because of in-person or lack thereof work in the downtown. And I think when you talk to restaurateurs, when you talk to the conventioneers, when you talk to other people who have evening and weekend work, you get a whole different sense of the bounce back and the energy that's coming back. And so what I would challenge you to do is have a very fulsome view of what's happening, not just in our downtown, but across the country.
Well, we have this situation where, the most expensive street in the region is now at the waterfront in Southwest.
Okay.
One of the 10 most expensive in the country.
The most expensive streets?
Yeah, there was a report in, I think,
okay, I must have missed that one.
The point is, this area where there was, not a whole lot going on is now incredibly dynamic.
Absolutely.
Can't imagine what the rent is, but I'm sure I can't afford it kind of place. At the same time as we're seeing struggles with vacancies in office buildings and so on, you're the mayor of a city that more than probably any other city in the country is built around office work as an economy. It's like you're the mayor of Detroit and those are the car factories and they're empty. We're looking at a future where whatever we do to try to get people to come back to the office, it ain't going to be like what it was. Tell me about some of the things you're thinking about for how to make sure that the downtown remains an economic engine.
Well, I do think that we have to have more people live in the downtown. You're right to say that probably the most, but we have over 90% of our, built out environment in the downtown is commercial, and that's just too much. The mix isn't right. We can go to places like the Wharf or Navy Yard or Union Market or other places in the city in Georgetown that fared better during the pandemic because more people live there. And that is part of our focus for this downtown is to add 15,000 more residents. And I think we're going to do better than that. We see the conversions happening. We're number one in the nation's per capita of the number of conversions from office to residential in the pipeline. We have two incentives, one approved, I think last year or the year before, housing in downtown, which sends the message to the market that the district wants to be your partner if you're interested in one of those conversion projects. And in this budget, we include an incentive for converting office to any productive use. So we're getting a lot of interest in hotel properties and the like.
So looking forward, whoever is sitting in this office in 20 or 30 years is going to be in charge of a city with a different mix between residential and offices.
I think whoever sits here in 10 years is going to have a whole different mix of the number of people living downtown. Now, the other thing that we are more challenged by are these beautiful, majestic buildings in our city that are really built for one purpose, and that's federal workers. So part of my challenge when I talk to the development community, and we were just at a conference, I talked to the retail community, is like, we're different. Like, we really are different in our city, in the U.S. And if we have to remake these buildings, what would we do?
You were just in Las Vegas at the shopping centers conference. And folks like that, they look at one of these, beautiful 1930s buildings with the columns and so on. What are some of the wild ideas that
I don't
that
think
people
they're
might
really
have?
thinking about it yet, although we have one really great example here. We have a couple that I point to as reuse projects. And one is the Carnegie Library right in the heart of downtown that is both an Apple store and the D.C. History Center.
That's a combination that I didn't really expect to succeed, but it's still there.
It's working. So we were able to maintain a building that really needed some investment and marry these two uses, retail and a part of DC preservation history. I think what's happened with Johns Hopkins and the museum right in the downtown is another great example of a huge building that had been used as a museum that now is really quite vibrant with students and professors and talks and visiting staff. And so we're going to have to think about these federal buildings in a wholly different way.
Speaking of big structures in D.C., you have been on the record saying you want to get the football team back in town. And I think the polls are with you. The most recent post poll at least suggests a lot of D.C. residents would like to see the Commanders back in town.
A lot. But you should be more specific.
Well, do you know the number?
I mean, it is overwhelming. And I would say that the difference between now and the last time that question is asked is also pretty significant.
So let me lay my cards on the table. I'm not in that majority. I'm on the other side. Convince me. Tell me, why should we get the Commanders back? It seems to me we're a city with housing is insanely expensive. There's not enough of it. There's not that much land. Why don't we save that RFK space to turn into a neighborhood?
Well, RFK will be a neighborhood, whether it has the NFL stadium or not. It's 170 acres there. So I expect that we're going to have a great amount of green space, housing, commercial connections to the park, our own sports facility, DPR facility that we already have funded. So it is going to be an incredible mixed-use development.
Why do we need to give a billionaire sports owner help to do that? Couldn't we do it without a stadium?
Yes, we could do it without a stadium. We can have a downtown without an arena, too.
Well, no. I mean, that's different because that arena is like 80, 90 nights a year. And a football stadium, there's 9 games a year?
Oh, but it has much more than games.
Right.
It will be entertainment.
So there'll be like a theater, bowling alley, others. I mean, I see that.
I don't think it's been designed.
Right.
So I wouldn't jump ahead.
The trend in stadiums is they become part of this complex that has other things.
I think that's the trend in mixed-use development in urban areas.
So we started by talking about a hypothetical election if you were up, but there is an election this year, and a lot of people look to you for guidance. There's an election in Ward 4 where you live. Do you know who you're going to vote for? Or
I do.
Who are you going to vote for?
I'm not endorsing any candidate, but I do know who I'm going to vote for.
If someone comes to you and says, hey, I generally agree with you. I think you're doing a good job as steward of the city. What kinds of things should I think about when I go into the polling place?
This is what, I've been a ward council member. I've been an ANC commissioner, and I've been elected mayor 3 times in this town. So I think when you are looking to hire somebody, you want to make sure that they are going to represent your interest, that they listen to you, that they call you back, that they show up, and that they're working hard for your interest. I was not an elected official nor a voter who is interested in kind of your your national politics. I want to know what you're doing for my neighborhood, for our schools, and for our city.
But there still is, even if if you assume that, yes, you should have someone who is a responsible, decent responder for their citizens. We still have, even when you don't think about the national level, we still have like pretty big disagreements in D.C. that you outlined a little bit here about defunding the police, about some of the crime stuff, about the budget that's going on right now, about taxes and so on. Most of us are Democrats in D.C. What are some ways of discerning between Democrats, and what are some of the things that people should be looking at for deciding their vote within that?
If you're concerned about crime, which most people are, I would ask candidates what's their record on crime and where do they stand with adjusting the public safety ecosystem. I would ask them, do they support the mayor's policies and support the chief of police? And do they want to see more police and not less police? Do they want to make sure that young people who are committing crimes with guns are being held accountable and not diverted from the system? How do they think gun offenders should be treated? In D.C., should you be able to use a gun willy-nilly, whereas if you did the same thing in Virginia or Maryland, you would be held accountable? I would be asking them those questions.
So you have a hunch about where your answer is for those, but you just don't want to tell me who you're going to vote for.
No, I don't intend to tell you who I'm going to vote for, but I do want everybody to go out and vote. I also think people should be paying very close attention to how the council and any council candidate approaches our fiscal environment. You mentioned earlier, we really haven't had to be as strategic around some big ticket expenditures in the district, but we always should have been. I wasn't a council member who liked to create a bunch of gold ticket programs, but now like those programs can't grow faster than the city's own economy. And so I would be really asking people, if you're concerned about spending, and if you're concerned about fiscal responsibility, what is your candidate's approach to new programs, to right-sizing programs? What is your candidate's approach to raising your taxes? You know,
What do you think the right approach should be?
I have advanced the right approach. We had to cut spending by like $800 million this year. We had to raise revenue, when the only other time I've proposed raising revenue had to do with the metro system, to the tune of about $500 million. And I think that's what we can take. I don't think we should be doing any more. And I don't think we should be raising property taxes, period. Not residential property taxes, not commercial property taxes, not changing the homestead deduction or any other like kind of gimmick to get more money out of people for their property. I also don't think that we should be raising income taxes. I'm going to point you back to my statement about people weren't really paying attention. A couple years ago, the council raised taxes on so-called high income earners. Didn't really need it. Said it at the time, but it was to create these new programs that now we can't afford. And so at a time when you might think that we need more revenue, you've already raised revenue on high income earners. You certainly can't go back to doing that again. So I've heard some council members say we need to spend less money. We need an expenditure committee to show us how to do it. Well, I don't think that there first has to be a willingness to cut programs that people like. And when you had tons of ARPA money, you could create those programs. Yeah. But now that you don't, you can't just keep adding new programs without paring anything away or going back to voters to say, I don't really want to make tough decisions, so I'm going to ask you for some more money to create programs that won't help us grow.
We've also got unprecedented this year. 2 members of the council are facing recall elections. Neither of them are your elected representative, but one of them, Charles Allen, is someone you've clashed with, not personally, but about like serious policy matters about criminal justice in D.C. How do you feel about, like, should he be recalled?
Listen, that's up to the voters of Ward 6. I don't wish him any ill will. And as a person who's in elected office, I also wouldn't wish a recall effort on anyone. But it is part of our system, and so I have to leave that to the voters of Ward 6.
Do people who are pushing the recall believe that policies embraced by the council when he was leading that committee are responsible for the spike we saw last year You opposed those policies. Do you think that is true, that those policies wound up like putting us in a bad place?
Yes.
So when someone says, Charles Allen is a person who has pushed stuff that got us in a bad place, they're not just hot air.
Look, I've been clear about where now. I'm happy to share with you. We put it in a graphic so it's clear to everybody our concerns around the changes to the public safety ecosystem.
When I ran into you a few weeks ago, the other thing that I thought you said that I thought was so interesting was how it's an election year and there's a lot of candidates running Ward 7. But in a lot of the ward races, there's actually not that many people running. And that what is it going on? Is it that our politics in D.C. or America have become nastier? Is it a moment where people realize it's like who wants to be council member when you got to vote to cut things? What do you think is going on?
I have reflected on that. I think I probably shared with you when I ran for the council, I think I was one of 18 people running. And now like hardly anybody wants to run for the council. And I think that's sad.
What do you think we can do to change that?
I think we as a city, we just really have to pay attention to our local issues, and we have to be engaged, and we have to say, or look for all around in every sector to see who wants to be in government. The council is a part-time position, so people can have other professions and serve on the council. And given like post-COVID is like, it's not even that much in person work at the council. So I think that people should really look for a great opportunity. And one thing I know is that people are going to wake up one day and realize how great, if you do politics, if you like policy, there's no better job in the world to me than to be mayor of your hometown. And I felt like equally privileged to represent Ward 4.
Do you think you'll be on the ballot in 2 years?
I don't know.
What are some of the things that are going to help you know?
Listen, I have approached every campaign that I have ever run for with what do I want to do? And do I think most people will support that? The last time, I will tell you, I thought long and hard about running for a third term. The famous words are, third terms are hard.
And this one's been hard.
Third terms are hard, but every term is hard.
Yeah, but no one wakes up in the morning thinking, I want to go cut $800 million today. That's not very many people's ideas of fun.
Well, if you do public policy and you work with budgets and you want to do what's right for your city, budgets are like puzzles, and putting puzzles together, that is fun. I didn't say it wasn't hard, but what I have learned over 10 years, I feel very confident when I put those puzzle pieces together that is doing the most, the fastest for the most people, and is good for the people of the District of Columbia.
Mayor, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our interim executive producers are Julia Karen and Kayla Cote-Stemmerman. Kayla also writes our super informative and fun newsletter. It's called Hey DC. Our interim producer is Ash Durbin, and our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back Tuesday morning after the long weekend with more news from around the city. Bye.